Hey everybody, Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another edition of Deep Cuts on Classic Albums. Today we're going to talk about the late 1971 release from the mighty Led Zeppelin. Of course, we're talking about their famous Untitled album, which most of us refer to as Led Zeppelin 4, their fourth studio album release. Probably their best known album, although they've got a string of great albums, obviously. If not everything that they put out, we probably list as great. This one, very noteworthy for the inclusion of a couple songs that are forever going to be known as vintage classic Led Zeppelin, if not some of the greatest rock songs ever recorded. So, of course, our Deep Cut show, we kind of tend to focus a little bit more on the deep album tracks as opposed to the hits. So let's get right down to it on this one. So, of course, this one mostly was recorded at the Headley Grange, right, out in the countryside. Guys were writing and recording out in the middle of nowhere. Well, not quite out in the middle of nowhere, but in a kind of remote location for most of 1970 into early 1971. They released this album in November of 1971. Of course, it kicks off with their famous song, Black Dog, which for me, there's three songs on this album that get played a ton, that have been played a ton. If you've been a lifelong music fan and been into Zeppelin since the early days, obviously we're talking about Black Dog, Rock and Roll, and Stairway to Heaven. These songs are ingrained in our minds and our souls. For many of us, we've probably heard these songs a million times, and for some of us, if we heard it more, each one of these more than a couple times a year, it's probably enough at this point. Black Dog I never get sick of. I still like Black Dog. I think it's just got a great riff. It's got a great vocal from Robert Plant. Just an unmistakable heavy rock song, and for me, one of the signature Led Zeppelin songs of all time. I totally love it. Rock and Roll, on the other hand, probably the Led Zeppelin song that if I never heard it again, I'd be okay with. I was never a huge fan of it. I get its significance. Now you see it showing up in commercials and people singing it in karaoke. You go out to a bar or something, people play it on the jukebox, and you hear it. Turn on FM rock radio, you hear it. You turn on satellite radio, you hear it. I've had enough of it, so we're going to skip right by Rock and Roll. Battle of Evermore is a very cool tune. That's kind of like this mystical folk tune. Of course, you got Sandy Denny on dueling vocals with Robert Plant. You've got Page and John Paul Jones on dueling mandolins. Just a kind of mystical, whimsical, very, very cool song with a great kind of arrangement as far as like the stringed instruments go. And if you've never heard it, check out Hart's version of Battle of Evermore. It's pretty damn good too. So that's a keeper. I like that song a lot. Of course, you got Stairway to Heaven. We all know Stairway to Heaven and Death. Don't need to spend too much time with it. An epic song, probably one of the greatest songs ever written. We're going to skip right by that because we all know Stairway very, very well. Misty Mountain Hop, from its very beginning, the kind of funky electric piano vamp from John Paul Jones, and then the great drum work from Mr. Bonham, who, for my money, puts in a clinic throughout this album. He's just thunderous on this album and on this tune. I like this tune. It's kind of, like I said, kind of bluesy, kind of funky, but it's got that kind of cool hard rock riff from Page. Very, very cool song. A great playful vocal from Plant as well. Good tune. That moves into Four Sticks. For me, one of the two unsung heroes of this album. Dun 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 dun. Just a sledgehammer of a riff from Mr. Page, but you got Bonham kind of percolating underneath, and then that very coy, very cool vocal from Robert Plant. Just a great song. And then I love the kind of like the kind of middle section that gets a little folky, a little jazzy almost, before the thunder comes back in. Great song. Great song. Always love Four Sticks. Going to California, again, another kind of poppy folk tune. I honestly never really liked Going to California. For me, that was just, I know a lot of people dig it. I never much cared for it. Again, if you like that sort of thing, I'm not going to spend too much time on Going to California. But then, of course, the piece de resistance to finalize the whole thing, When the Levee Breaks. The epic on the album, next to Stairway, this kind of bluesy, majestic, hard rock anthem that again punctuated by some phenomenal drum work from John Bonham. Once again, proving why he was one of the greatest drummers of the 70s. That opening drum barrage, many have tried to mimic it, but it's just so perfect. Then you got, the harmonica, the haunting harmonica from Plant. You got Page's mix of searing slide guitar and shimmering chords, and the heavy rock riffs. The song just builds and builds and builds to an intense climax. It's just a wonderful, wonderful tune, and I think one of the most underrated Led Zeppelin songs of all time. Just a brilliant, brilliant tune. One of my favorites by the band. So that's Led Zeppelin 4 in a nutshell. Some great deep cuts. In fact, this album is probably, when you're talking about classic albums that had a couple big hits, but some of the deep cuts are just as strong, but maybe not as, don't carry as much notoriety. This is a perfect example. Just Battle of Evermore, Misty Mountain Hop, Four Sticks, and When the Levee Breaks. Man, it doesn't get much better than that. For me, Going to California, I could do without that. I know a lot of you are probably fans of that, and you're going to be like, no, Going to California rules. That's fine. Rock and Roll I Never Need to Hear Again. Stairway to Heaven I still can listen to once or twice a year and totally get into it. Don't need to hear it more than that. And I could hear Black Dog any day. I love Black Dog, one of my favorite Zepp tunes of all time. So really, really good. So there's your deep cuts on classic album for today. Actually, we got another one coming right up. Led Zeppelin's 4. Or Led Zeppelin Untitled, Led Zeppelin Zofo, whatever you want to call it. It's a classic album, and it's got some great deep tracks, deep cuts. So your homework for today, if you're only a casual fan of this album, and the titles Four Sticks, When the Levee Breaks, Misty Mountain Hop, and Battle of Evermore are not familiar to you, go out and listen to them. Wherever you go and seek out new music and sample music, go stay here on YouTube and go check them out. I guarantee you'll love them. So make sure you visit us on the web also at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. Of course, we're on the mighty YouTube. Lots more deep album cuts shows coming up. So stay tuned. We'll see you real soon. Bye-bye.